live in a world that is facing extreme environmental challenges that impact individuals, communities, and the ways in which we operate and function in the world. Let's take a closer look at a few of the topics specific to the global concerns of use and misuse of land resources, animal waste management, soil and water quality, and energy consumption and production.
We have a lot of environmental challenges related to that system now, but as the climate continues to change, right, if we're not very nimble and able to, right, change what we're doing, then we're really going to be in a difficult situation because you're very much stuck in these, kind of systems where you're going out to consultants for your seed and you're looking at to agronomists, and right, they're all trying to contribute to this specific kind of agricultural system as opposed to being able to adapt quickly with different kinds of crops or different kinds of, right, the ability to sell to different kinds of markets. And so I think that's a huge challenge in the US context. And then increasingly, I don't work in, the Brazilian context. I work more in Colombia, but increasingly we're seeing moves to this kind of model. So
the model, the U.S. model, we're seeing moves
monocropping,
to that.
this kind of large-scale industrial where, a few people buy up a lot of land or, right, have access to a lot of land. And we're seeing palm oil plantations and, right, where people are incentivized to cut down the Amazon rainforest in favor of rangeland or in favor of monocropping. And so we're literally destroying diverse habitats in order to promote this kind of one type of intensive agricultural system, which we know is insanely productive. It's, it's able to feed a lot of animals and humans, but, right, we have a lot of trade-offs in pursuing that kind of model. And so I think more people need to ask about those trade-offs and whether it continues to be worth it, especially in a changing climate.
In terms of impact on the environment, that's often cited as another question. So we have, large-scale agricultural somethings that do something bad is kind of the narrative you'll hear. But it's a little hard to find those. And it's not always clear whether large or smaller scale production results in more or less environmental damage. The classic examples of large-scale dairy quite often have better ability to control manure and effluent than a bunch of small-scale dairies. But at the same time, small-scale dairies exist in places where it would be difficult to put a large-scale dairy. My own family upbringing included a dairy farm with pastoral dairy, so wouldn't dream of it these days, but cows out in the pasture where there's a stream running through it is probably not a great outcome, even though it's a small scale. So I think it's really an easy thing to rant against. It's a hard thing to really get into and understand carefully. And I don't think there's an obvious solution, not large scale, not small scale. I think it's the fact that economic systems evolve into the most efficient final place in most cases.
A lot of it comes down to how much feed and water is needed, because certainly water can be in short supply in many parts of the world. Feed for the animals, unless they're a grazing animal and there are grazing lands available, feed has to be grown, has to be produced. Can that be done locally? How much land does that take? So there's an environmental component there. And then, what comes out the other end of the animal, that has to be dealt with. And so manure, if it's in large-scale animal production, you have to handle that large volume of manure, which has value. It has value as a fertilizer, but still has to be handled properly. Make sure it's stored properly, transported properly, and applied properly. And then in developing countries, what technologies do they have to do those things? Too often, and what often gets headlines is the slash and burn kind of animal agriculture, where people out of, I think oftentimes necessity, dire necessity, will cut down forests and turn that into agricultural land. They will use it very rapidly and deplete the resources there and then move on. And that's something I think we need to figure out ways to get around that, to not have to do that. But that's an environmental impact that often gets in the news because it's so drastic and dramatic and really does have an impact on biodiversity in those local areas. So the environmental piece is very important, and we need people with many different perspectives working on that.
The environmental challenges specific to the food production systems are just a few of the grand challenges we face. These challenges vary across small and large-scale food production operations and have short and long-term consequences. As you watch this module, please think about the environmental resources that stand out in your mind, whereby if we protect them, maintain them, or even slightly improve them, we'll make strides in addressing some of our grand challenges in the food system.
The soil is basically, those soils actually, developed under the prairie. This was the prairie. Illinois was the heart of the prairie. And this prairie is actually, this switchgrass is one of the 3 tall grass species in our prairie, which is one of the dominant, tall grass species. And this is a plant that actually put a lot of organic matter into the soil and they make this dark, fertile soil we are currently using for the crop production is actually.
I hear your department talk a lot about regenerative agriculture. Could you talk a little bit more about what that means
Sure.
and around some of the major regenerative agriculture initiatives in the department?
Different people have different views on what regenerative ag means. In my mind, regenerative ag is an outcome-oriented approach to improving our basic productive resources in agriculture. So protecting and building soil quality, biodiversity, water quality, equity, and economic resilience in rural communities. And rather than in regenerative agriculture, any one approach being prioritized over others, it's more about finding ways for different people to begin where they are and try to improve those metrics and actually really focus on measuring them. So I'll contrast with organic agriculture, which I've been involved with for many years. There's kind of an improved set of practices. And you assume that if you're using these, you're going to make progress. In regenerative ag, it's rather there's a desired set of outcomes, and we're trying to see how the different things that we do, production practices, cropping system design, value chain design, how the different things we do affect those metrics of interest.
Okay.
And so a large initiative that we took starting a couple of years ago now is the Illinois Regenerative Ag Initiative. And specifically, that was designed to try to help us at the University of Illinois show up for our stakeholders in this area. And we hired Dr. Emily Heaton as our first director for IRAI and also our first professor of regenerative agriculture.
Okay, and so why do we want to increase the organic matter in the soil?
Well,
why is that important?
Soil organic matter it's very important other than just climate change, because the soil organic matter is improving the soil quality, actually, soil physical property. Soil organic matter contains a lot of different organic matter and nutrient, and also physically as the organic matter, this root material slowly decompose and become part of the organic matter. That actually improve the physical property. They increasing water holding capacity, increasing nutrient holding capacity, and then they make the soil structure much better. And then there more aeration. There's a lot more physically support the plants is better. And basically, as a plant grows, it's very important having high soil organic matter.
Our use of available land and water resources is of critical importance. Therefore, we must consider how the decisions we make today related to food production systems will impact future generations. You also learned about biodiversity, which is the interactions of all living things with the physical world around them. We must consider how we protect biodiversity and ensure we can produce and distribute adequate supplies of high-quality food to people around the planet. Finally, this module helps you consider the role that regenerative agriculture can play in improving our planet and our food production systems.